The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for the 16th of January, 2016, open up with gold at $1,088.56 an ounce, silver $13.91 an ounce, Texas crude $29.42 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently at 366 U.S. currency. Today in history, Friday, January 16th, 1920. The first assembly of the League of Nations is officially held in Paris. The League of Nations was set up as a result of World War I and was disbanded on April 20th, 1946, almost a year after the founding of the United Nations. In recent news, a Pentagon accountability review found that the Army's Dugway Proving Ground in Utah had inadvertently shipped live anthrax samples for more than a decade. Richard Ebright, a microbiologist at Rutgers University who has testified before Congress on lab safety standards, stated that, quote, "This was not a mere culture of complacency requiring reprimands or employment consequences. This was criminal negligence. There needs to be criminal charges." Of course, Army officials said that there was no findings of any criminal wrongdoing while continually stressing that no single individual was directly responsible for the shipments. The names of a dozen or so individuals who might possibly be facing disciplinary actions, maybe perhaps even possible termination, were blacked out on the report. Currently, labs that work with potential bioterror pathogens are regulated by the Federal Select Agent Program, which are jointly run by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The CDC and the USDA operate their own labs and are part of the departments that fund research at the labs they inspect. The family of deceased Jonas Savimbi, legendary Angolan rebel leader who was assassinated by the MLPA back in 2002, is suing Activision Blizzard for $1 million over the depiction of Savimbi in Call of Duty Black Ops 2. The Guardian states that 3 of Savimbi's children, who claim that the depiction of their dad is that of a half-wit and a barbarian, are using France's strict anti-defamation laws to seek reparations from Activision for damages from their father's depiction in the game. This wasn't the first time that anti-defamation laws were aimed at Activision for this very game. Manuel Noriega, as reported by PC Gamer, also tried suing because he was depicted as a cruel dictator. That case was thrown out. We'll see what comes of this one. This was your lowdown for January 16th, 2016.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I have a joke for you. Okay. The government in this town is excellent and uses your tax dollars efficiently. Pay attention. I thought you'd see it coming. The moment's here.
Bitcoin is immune from attack or almost completely. With Bitcoin, you actually gain far more from using the computing power to generate Bitcoins.
There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear. There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear.
We'll walk deeper into the belly of the beast if it means I'm able to further limit reckless government spending. I mean, I have so many ideas. Some are simple, like take down traffic lights and eliminate the post office. The bigger ones will be tougher, like bring all of this crumbling to the ground.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Crypto Show, a show dedicated to understanding the promise of currency, technology, and anarchy in the pursuit of a free society. And if you believe like we do that such a society can and should exist, then join us, why don't you, as we parade through a world unbound by convention, a world sketched by the beauty of the human artist. Because each and every one of you listening right now is that artist. So for the next 2 hours, let go of your most sacred system of thought and entertain the possibility that maybe, just maybe, everything we've been told about currency, technology, and yes, even that dirty little word anarchy is only one part of an ever-expanding, ever-possible, complex universe of ideas, one that we simply refuse to explore. So what do you say, listeners? Let's do some universe exploring tonight and have some fun while we do it. Oh, I see what you mean. I like that. It's chill. It's relaxed. It's cool. I thought you meant the intro reminded you of the Pink Panther, and I did not see that. That makes more sense now. Well, guys, it is January 17th, 2016, a Sunday. It's been a long weekend for us here at the Crypto Show, but hopefully we can put in a good performance tonight. We do have an excellent guest whom I'm about to introduce. I do want to mention, as always, that we are brought to you by Logos Radio Network, and Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com is having a cool fundraising contest with some cool prizes, so check that out at logosradionetwork.com. And don't forget, that's a good commercial, by the way. You're getting really good at this commercial thing, Danny. It's kind of surprising. Yeah, of course, Danny's voice you probably heard on 89.1 FM advertising that fundraiser. So check that out. Help the network. It survived this long thanks to your support, and it will continue to survive well into the future if you just give a little. And, of course, some great prizes if you do. So check that out. And we are brought to you by our sponsors, Hill Country Home Improvements and Brave New Books. Don't forget, Weird Wednesdays are starting up this week, Wednesday the 20th, with JCTV.
That's weird.
Definitely weird. So check that out. More info on the Brave New Bookstore webpage. And don't forget to our new sponsor coming up, eCoin, and we'll talk more with them and about them in upcoming episodes. So let's get to it. We have a very special guest, Tuur Demeester. I hopefully said that close enough. Let's see. Oops. Let me grab his bio right here. Tuur, or you said Arthur is also good, right?
Arthur's great. Arthur works.
I'm going to go with Arthur. Arthur Demeester is an author of the Dutch newsletter Macro Trends and editor-in-chief of Adamant Research, or as Danny likes to say, Adam Ant Research, which was the first subscription-based financial newsletter to consistently Macro Trends was to consistently recommend Bitcoin as an investment, starting from when Bitcoin was only $5 in early 2012. He travels extensively, is well connected with Bitcoin innovators in Europe, the United States, and Argentina. After reading Ludwig von Mises' Human Action as a student, Arthur decided to drop out of university and pursue his studies in a self-directed manner. I respect that.
What? How much did you say it was?
What, $5?
Yeah.
Wow! That's a low price!
Any excuse to get that in there. Any excuse. He co-founded the Murray Rothbard Institute in 2007 and later translated Jesus Huerta de Soto's Money, Bank Credit and Economic Cycles into Dutch, something I've read in English. It's a good paper. He also co-founded 2 private schools, one in Belgium and one in the Netherlands. Arthur, welcome to the Crypto Show.
Hi, guys. Nice. I'm glad you'll have me. I'm sorry. I guess I'm stumbling on my words. I'm pretty excited to be talking to people down in Austin. Spent some time there in 2013.
You were here for the Bitcoin conference, right?
Yeah, that too. And I spent some more time because I was involved for a while as an early investor in the mining company, Cointerra. So I helped out actually pretty much before they had the first product. That was a few weeks in Austin. I remember Hop Dotty was my favorite burger joint.
Oh, that's a great place if you can get into it. I think there's like a 2-week waiting list these days.
Oh, wow.
I mean, not really, but there's like you stand an hour for like an hour or stand in line for like an hour and a half just to get in. But that's a great place. Any plans on coming back to Austin anytime soon?
We do have U.S. travel plans, but that'll probably be next fall, and I hope that Austin is part of that. Yeah,
I hope so too, because it's still not set in stone. But the 2016 Texas Bitcoin Conference may be taking place in the fall, right, Denny?
Yeah, I was actually talking to Linda about it yesterday. So
okay, awesome. That's still tentative.
They haven't set any dates yet, but they are looking to start planning it.
Okay, excellent. Well, hopefully Arthur can come for that. Well, and Arthur, you said we maybe have 30 or 45 minutes with you?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. Just so because I have a bunch of questions. I want to make sure I don't hit to the core of the ones. And then maybe we can add some more if you can stay with us a little longer. Well, let's see where to begin. I do want to know, I guess, tell us briefly real quick your background. You mentioned that you read Mises in school and you're a follower of the Austrian school, which we are here too at the show. Tell us real quick how you came across Mises, Human Action, and the Austrian school and how you discovered Bitcoin so early on.
Yeah, so let's see. I was like totally politically oblivious for a long time, until I was like 22 or something. But I was interested in philosophy, and there was a very obscure Belgian newsletter that was not even on paper. It was just an email newsletter, and the author of which was really into direct democracy. So I was intrigued by that, and he was talking about Switzerland and some of the ideas around that. And then he did a discussion of a book called Democracy, the God That Failed, which is Hans Hermann Hoppe, written by this anarcho-capitalist. And then from there, he also discussed some of Rothbard's writings, and that really piqued our interest. It wasn't just me. It was me and a couple friends who were reading this newsletter. And then from there, we were like, oh, what is this Austrian school thing? And decided to to start reading. And my friend bought what he understood was the Bible of Austrian economics, which is Human Action. So that's how Human Action became the very first book I ever read in Austrian school economics, and it just blew my mind. It was incredible, especially the first part about the methodology was just, I felt like a light went on in the room. I was so excited.
I know what you mean. I've read it too, and it took me a long time to get through it. Lots of rereading, but yeah, that whole way in which Mises revolutionized, economic methodology and economic thought, setting it in that, deductive reasoning, praxeology. That blew my mind too. I love hearing that from other people.
And from there it was like, all right, there's Mises, there's Rothbard, and there's reading about sound money. We did quite a bunch of seminars. We translated books, and gradually for a while I thought about an academic career, but then that really felt too much. I didn't want to be around people who were basically bureaucrats, and I didn't want to become one. So
good for you.
And I'm glad so far it's worked out. But so I did stuff. I dropped out of university because I felt disillusioned by what I found there, and then I was in sales for a while and doing the odd jobs here and there, doing translations, some web design, this and that, and I became increasingly uneasy about the economy. It was 2006-07, things started to really shift, and then the big crash in 2008. So I really wanted to do something online, and that's how gradually I decided to focus more and more on investing, reading about investing, learning about it, because this is a trade you can bring anywhere. I can live anywhere in the world and do this.
Yeah, no, obviously, especially with the internet, absolutely true.
Where are you right now?
For the moment, I'm in Mexico. I tend to be in Latin America. That's kind of where I've been the past 2 years.
Are you going to be at the Anarchapulco thing next month?
No, I'm head down, busy with the launch of our newsletter. No, I'm spending too much time setting up everything and doing the research.
Oh, well, congratulations on that. And is this a different newsletter or?
Yeah. So Macrotrends was I did it for 2 years and a half. I worked with a publisher, and then he a little bit longer, I think. And then by summer 2013, he became uneasy about how much I was writing about Bitcoin, and he said, like, it's. And he was right, actually. The pond was too small to do a very Bitcoin specific newsletter. But the irony has it that it was October, November when I left. And that's, of course, when the huge rally came, when Bitcoin went to 1,000. It was late 2013. But it was great for me because I was able to focus on some other things. And I also moved away from Belgium about half a year after that. So it was great timing. And then, I've taken the time to really sit down and think about what I want to do next. And it's an English language newsletter. So that is what we're doing with Adamant Research. It'll be the Adamant newsletter, come out every month. And basically I'll share what I do with my own money and some of my ideas about how I want to do long-term planning, but also very concretely what I do every day with trying to preserve my wealth, trying to diversify, and trying to be part of this exciting Bitcoin economy.
Speaking of 2013, when you were at the Latin American conference, we kind of spoke about this earlier. There was a statement that you had made that I found really interesting. The Bitcoin is apartheid of. How did that go again?
Bitcoin is the end of monetary apartheid.
There you go. Where did you come up with that?
I don't really remember, but it just struck me that, especially in Latin America, Bitcoin has a political ring to it. It really is like people understand that it's something very exciting and liberating in a very concrete way. And it made me think about how people are actually financially repressed in many countries in the world, including Argentina and other places. I mean, increasingly China now, where it's just really hard to move your money across the border and to move it to a safer place or wherever you want to invest it. And so in a way, we live really in a world where there is segregation based depending on what passport you have.
Well, coming to break with Arthur Demestre. We'll be right back.
Logos.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
This is what happens when you call the cops. Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops.
Well, if Rob Hussle, the singer of that song, has taught you anything, don't call the cops unless you absolutely have to. Check out robhussle.com for more of his work, including his
sequel.
If
you have excessive donuts you need to get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. And of course his sequel, Good Cops. And he's working on the music video for that. We're talking with Arthur Demestre. And you can check out his stuff at adamantresearch.com or tourdemester.com. And let me spell that. That's TURDEMEESTER.com. TWRDEMEESTER.com or adamantresearch.com. And coming back from break, I guess since we potentially have limited time, let's kind of hop into one of the main things I wanted to ask you. There's a lot of stuff I wanted to ask you, but as I'm sure you're aware, Arthur, there's the whole situation with the impending threat of a fork and Bitcoin Classic and the potential switch over to a new Bitcoin. And there's also Mike Hearn, one of the original developers. Of course, he was pushing his XT. Of course, he recently sold all his Bitcoin and commented that this is the death of Bitcoin, although I think he's made probably 24 such comments over the months and years. Anyway, I want to get your take.
So am I picturing a small boy with toys in the sandbox, taking them and running home, all pissed
Pretty
off?
accurate.
Okay.
Pretty accurate, I think. But Arthur, give us your take on that. It's definitely a very confusing and contentious situation. It's a little scary, I think, for a lot of people. But what's your take on the whole situation?
Yeah. So first of all, I think we're talking about, all right, we're trying to scale Bitcoin. It's basically, all right, because it's so successful, so many people are using it, it's kind of running to the limits of its capacity. So that really, if you look at it, it's kind of a privileged position to be in. It's a great problem to have, first of all. Also, Bitcoin is an open source protocol. If you look at the history of open source protocols, there's lots of wars that are fought over this kind of stuff. Going back to the early days of the internet, Austin Hill, CEO of Blockstream, put out a great piece where he refers to that, saying that there are actual fistfights even happening between developers back in the early days about which protocol to follow and how to tweak it and how to change it. So, I mean, that to kind of put this whole thing in perspective, like it's to be expected, and it's the most healthy way we know of to develop code and to develop a decentralized network. Now, as far as the issues at hand, we're talking about scalability. It seems like there are two camps, depending on how you view Bitcoin. If you view Bitcoin as if you think it should be a Visa-like network, then you will tend to agree with people like Mike Hearn, who think that, all right, let's do a hard fork, a bit more centralization. Isn't that much of a problem? We want to make sure that the volume the volume capacity stays high enough so that people can still, buy a beer with Bitcoin if they want to, just so you can use it like PayPal. That's kind of there, and we're willing to do that trade-off of more centralization. That's how I see the one camp, and then the other camp sees Bitcoin more like gold, and is very focused on making sure that the Bitcoin network is decentralized and very focused on keeping it as secure as humanly possible. And that camp is willing to make some trade-offs. Maybe we're going to develop the upgrades a bit slower. We're going to think longer and harder about this. Maybe the concession will even be that for a while the price of Bitcoin is going to be lower because people are anxious and uncertain until we have that good solution. And then on top of that, on top of the Bitcoin protocol, we're going to build protocol layers like sidechains. Right. And then in those layers, we can have high volume transactions, those kind of things. But that takes a bit longer to develop. Personally, I'm in the second camp. I think Bitcoin is digital gold. And I think it's safer to go for soft forks. And I think we will resolve this issue. Even if there is a hard fork, I'm sure it will be handled in a responsible way. And I'm not worried about the long-term prospect of Bitcoin.
Well, that's good to hear, because I sometimes don't know what to think and I get a little scared when I suddenly hear headlines about Bitcoin's demise and the impending fork.
So one guy took his toys out of the sandbox, but the rest of the kids are starting to play. So it's
so
still recessed. Don't worry.
Yeah, there's still people working to make this a better system. Well, and I want you to elaborate real quick. You said there are two camps, kind of the Visa, PayPal camp, where you can kind of use Bitcoin like a sort of digital fiat, in very convenient ways to purchases big or small, or as digital gold. Now, when you say that, do you sort of mean that kind of like gold, Bitcoin, of course, would be decentralized more than in the other instance, but also it's more of a store of value than an everyday currency relative to that other?
Yeah, that's how I see it. I see Bitcoin as a store of value. And if you look at the gold market, there's also several layers in that. And if people use gold to trade, they buy gold coins or they buy gold ETFs or they buy gold securities, the most liquid assets are a couple of layers removed from the big bars of bullion that are in the London vaults or in the Zurich vaults. And the market that moves around these big bars is a very small market. And if you look at how many transactions a day happen, that's a very limited amount. You're talking about a few hundred transactions per day. And I'm not saying that it's a wonderful system. I'm not saying there's no fractional reserve happening. But I think roughly speaking, we could see a future like that where big blocks of Bitcoin are moved around on the Bitcoin blockchain, and where you have transaction fees that are too high to allow you to, pay for a beer with Bitcoin, but then high volume and smaller transactions can move to sidechains, which is equally secure as Bitcoin, but allows for a lot more functionality to be added without endangering the fundamental security of the Bitcoin main chain. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
No, it does. We've had people on who both advocate the side chain, applications, and in fact are developing them. And I like your take on it because it makes the debate a little more, I think, clear. Because there's, even with the people we've had on, there's sort of infighting and disagreement, obviously. But when you treat it like, as you said, gold versus necessarily like, say, digital cash all the time for small payments, I think that makes the whole debate a little bit more understandable. Like now to me, like the whole digital gold scenario to me makes a lot of sense, and I'm almost inclined to be in that camp.
And I mean, even if people are not, and if some of the other proposals went out and we have higher transaction volumes, and even then, I mean, we're talking about a magnitude improvement over the traditional financial system. And I mean, we can have that's the cool thing about this. Anybody can launch their own coin. If Bitcoin, the original project, somehow dilutes because we get a hard fork that gives us huge blocks, well, some people could still decide to continue mining the old coins and build up Bitcoin from there. I mean, any kind of movement of significance will have schisms, and we're seeing that big time in Bitcoin. And I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. It means that we're onto something. If people are this passionate about what's going on, it means, and I mean, not a few people. We're talking about thousands and thousands of people who are working on this, debating about this. It's huge. I think it's wonderful.
No, you're absolutely right. And when we step back and take some perspective in the grand scheme of things, these schisms and scuffles are not such a big deal, and are really an indication that we're on to something promising. Well, and so just to clarify too, so Blockstream is offering Bitcoin Classic, right, which is boosting the block size to 2 megabytes?
I don't think that comes from Blockstream, that proposal. I'd have to look. If you go to bitcoinclassic.com, you can see who, but it's pretty straightforward. I don't think there's actually a prominent developer who's proposing it, but it's pretty straightforward. It's just basically doubling the block size, the maximum block size, from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes, and then kind of keeping the rest of the protocol as is. But it appears that it's not as easy as it seems like to do this seamlessly and to make the transition go well. So that's where some of the soft fork people are concerned about.
And so, do you think 2 megabytes is a good step? Is that just a temporary step, or what do you think?
I think basically what's happening now, at least from my perspective, what we're doing is we're buying time until this new layer of the Bitcoin protocol is ready, and more people work with that and know how it works, and it's integrated with software, which is sidechains.
We'll be right back.
Microchip scanners and cookies. Oh my! Don't look now, but here comes the e-receipt. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be right back to explain the dangers of paperless receipts in just a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
First, retailers started asking for your zip code. Next, they wanted your phone number. And now they want your email address to send you receipts electronically rather than handing you a slip of paper. Companies don't mention what this does to your privacy. Instead, they claim it's more convenient and, hey, it may even save a few trees. But e-receipts link you to your purchases in a giant database so they can build consumer profiles, tailor ads to individual shoppers, and sell your information to third parties. Having all your purchases in an online database sounds like an open invitation to hacking and abuse, not to mention an onslaught from unscrupulous marketers. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time to take back the power. What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter?
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely January 17th, 2016, a Sunday here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by our sponsors, Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements and soon eCoin. And we're talking with Arthur Demester. Check out his websites, adamantresearch.com and tourdemester.com, TURDEMEESTER.com.
Actually, if people Google my name, what comes up first is my Twitter account. I'm pretty active there. So if you want to follow what I do on a day-to-day basis, that's probably the best place, my Twitter account.
Oh, excellent. Good call. I should have actually mentioned that because I did go to your Twitter account for a lot of the questions. So yeah, good call on that. So check out his Twitter account as well. He is actually quite active and has quite a following. And his followers are pretty active at posting stuff there too. Well, we're just talking about the recent developments of Bitcoin, the possibility of a fork. And I guess, and let's kind of get back into that real quick before we switch gears. Just to clear it up for our listeners and even for us, because I haven't been following it as closely, as I've wanted to recently, just because I've been, in the process of moving and stuff. Tell us about, so there's Bitcoin Classic and there's Segregated Witness. Tell us what the differences are and if the names have any meaning, because as Danny was saying, during the break, Bitcoin Classic, is kind of potentially a misleading, name for it. But, anyway, kind of, get into all that for us.
Yeah, so this is crypto politics, the birth of crypto politics, where like people, there are factions and people have slogans and so yeah, like Bitcoin Classic is a slogan. It's like, oh, let's keep it simple and we'll just double the block size and it'll be cool and be fine. But I mean, it is potentially misleading because we have not had, I mean, at least not since the very early days, we have not had a hard fork in Bitcoin. So there's a lot of uncertainty about what will happen to this $6 billion economy if all of a sudden you convince all the miners to move to what could be called an altcoin, right? You have a new protocol and everybody moves to that new protocol. It's hard to say what would happen. So yeah, I think you have to take it with a grain of salt. But in essence, the two proposals are Bitcoin Classic, which is a hard fork, increasing the block size from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes without much else. And then we have a soft fork proposal on the table developed by fellow Belgian, and also from Belgium, Pieter Wuille. He developed a proposal called Segregated Witness, and this is a soft fork. So basically, it would not split up the network in two, and is considered to be less risky. And what that does, it adds about 75% capacity to Bitcoin. It doesn't increase the block size, but it makes the transaction information smaller so that more transactions can fit in a 1 megabyte block. So it would become then the equivalent of a 1.75, 1.80 block.
Well, that does sound a lot cleaner and easier on the surface.
That is true, although I hear from wallet companies and other players that it does require a lot of work on their side to make sure that their software can handle these new types of transactions. So depending on who you ask, it's straightforward and easy, or not so much.
Oh, I see. That's a good point. So there could be like technical issues with wallet makers as they try to adapt, and that could lead to some temporary problems. I guess there is no sort of free lunch in the technical world. There's always some kind of a trade-off.
Yeah, exactly. We could also just do nothing. We could just wait and do nothing and hope for these sidechains to develop. There's already a sidechain called Liquid that is going to come out soon, and it's kind of a special deal. It allows Bitcoin exchanges to quickly move Bitcoins between each other. But I expect other sidechains to come later that will give access to the greater public. So we could just do nothing and wait for those. But then, of course, we run the risk of running out of capacity for a while, and transactions could then take a long time, and there could be a lot of FUD in that period.
Well, it seems to me that sidechains are not going anywhere in the sense of, if they raise it to 2 megabytes and then they raise it to, 4, 8, whatever, as Bitcoin usage increases and it bumps up against that block size limit, it seems like there's potentially always a need for sidechains. Am I correct in saying that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, think about privacy, for example. Bitcoin blockchain is horrible when it comes to privacy. And there's great sidechain proposals on the table to create an environment that's very confidential. So for that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter if Bitcoin is fast or not. You still want more. How are you going to launch or create assets on the Bitcoin blockchain? Colored coins has been tried, but it's pretty hard. There's a lot better solutions possible if you use sidechains for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and so they have definite versatility when it comes to Bitcoin applications. And then, of course, as we bump up against higher limits, they would also still be useful for that reason. So that's an interesting additional perspective on this whole thing. And we should get those Liquid guys on. Danny, make it so. That's interesting. I didn't heard about them. Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Well, let's
what's the difference between Liquid and Lightning then?
So Liquid is actually it's actually a sidechain developed by Blockstream. So the Blockstream guys are the ones who you should talk to about that. And they signed up a couple of Bitcoin exchanges who it's kind of a private deal. So it's like kind of like when you're talking about the internet, the early internet days, this is kind of like an intranet where these exchanges can move Bitcoins that they own between each other. So yeah, the difference with Lightning is that I believe Lightning will add a lot more speed. But I need to look into it again, because it might be that I'm not sure. It might be that Lightning is already implemented in Liquid, but Lightning is basically a way to move coins very, very quickly. And it could be implemented in Bitcoin main chain, but it's less risky to do it in the sidechains.
Is it Lightning with Blockstream?
Well, I don't know what that means. Like the Lightning guys are not in the Blockstream team. They're two developers.
Okay. Well, we'll have to. All the
we had a guy on from Blockstream, and I believe that's what he said. He was working on Lightning. So
we'll have to figure out all the different groups and stuff get confusing and confused anyway. But Blockstream and Liquid makes sense. The stream, Liquid, right. That's easy to remember.
For me, the takeaway is that there's just so much. There's so much coming online that has been. These things have been in the works for not months. Like sometimes it's been a year or more that it has been in the pipeline. This kind of stuff, and it's now coming out. And there's a lot more coming. Like it's just incredible how people think that Bitcoin is in a kind of existential crisis where, man, we're just getting started.
Isn't it like 130 million invested in the first month of 2016? So why would they just invest all that and then throw it away? Like, okay, it's dead, but we wasted our money. It's over.
There was a lot of money invested in pets.com, but that didn't work out either.
Oh, okay.
So it's no guarantee necessarily. But a lot of smart people are looking at it. And I'm not saying that there is zero chance that Bitcoin, the currency, can fail. That's not the case. There is probably maybe a 10-15% chance that it can fail from here on out somewhere. But that doesn't mean that the cryptocurrency revolution is going to stop, right? That'll just be a learning experience, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Even like Roger Ver and Eric Voorhees, who we've had on before, have said that very same thing. Like, to them, it's almost immaterial whether Bitcoin fails because the experiment has not failed and will not fail. And there's all sorts of other experiments going on. So, definitely agree with you on that. But yeah, you both have a good point, about the venture capital funding. Like, it's no guarantee that if a bunch of money's pouring into it that it's going to go anywhere, but it's still a strong indication that a lot of smart people are seeing the potential for Bitcoin. And of course, the more the venture capital pours in, the more things like, side chains and other applications have the resources to be developed and to improve the network. And so that's pretty exciting. Well, we're coming to break with Arthur de Mester. And of course, check him out on Twitter. And of course, his name is spelled T-W, or I should say T-U-U-R, not to be confused with the other letter. Every other European language calls it a double V, as it should be. T-U-U-R-D-E-M-E-E-S-T-E-R on Twitter. The same goes for his website, tourdemester.com. And check out his new website and newsletter coming up, adamantresearch.com, for more on that. And so, Arthur, do you have another? Go ahead.
Mind if I interrupt just a moment?
Well, actually, we're coming to break. Hopefully, you can do another segment with us real quick, or we can wrap up with you either way. We'll be right back, guys.
Easy.
Welcome back, guys, to the Crypto Show here on this lovely January 17th, 2016 here on Logos Radio Network. Brought to you as always by Brave New Books, Hill Country Home Improvements, and soon eCoin. And we're talking with Arthur de Mester. Again, check him out on Twitter, T-U-R-D-E-M-E-S-T-E-R, tourdemester.com and adamantresearch.com. And we were talking about the possibility of a hard or soft fork based on recent proposals for Bitcoin, and of course, all having to do with the block size limit and, of course, side chains that can offer, among other things, sort of a release valve for reaching that limit. And all very interesting stuff and a very interesting debate. And, of course, a lot of it does ultimately get back into the philosophy behind Bitcoin, as we kind of discussed. And as Danny was saying off air, Mike Hearn, who recently sold his Bitcoin and then said that it was dead. Danny made a good point, I thought, which is that he sold his Bitcoin first and then made that comment. And if he were really sort of had a little bit more integrity, I think he should have made the comment and then sold, because it's almost like a one-man insider trading where he gets to sell it at its full value, and then he gets to make the comment, which then hurts the value for everybody else. But luckily, the value has bounced back. That's another strong indicator. Of course, markets can be wrong and prices can be wrong in what they reflect. But the fact that the price bounced back a decent amount, I think, is an indicator of the confidence people have in Bitcoin. Well, Arthur, kind of along the lines of what we're talking about, you even said Bitcoin, say, has a 10 or 15% chance of, going the way of the dinosaur. Let's say it did. Would there be a cryptocurrency to replace it, and would you recommend one, or what do you think?
Well, Bitcoin is kind of weird in that it's like you can have, if Bitcoin is a dinosaur, you can have this giant meteor come down and like obliterate it, but somehow you would always be able to regenerate it. Its DNA would always be, laying around, and you could do like the Jurassic Park style resurrection, because you could just take the blockchain, and anybody who still had some private keys, could be involved, and you could just revive the Bitcoin itself. Or, of course, there could be alternative solutions, alternative coins that would then be adopted by more people that would have solved the problem that was apparently unsolvable in Bitcoin itself.
Right. Well, I'm just curious. That's a very good point you make, that it will never actually truly die and could be revived. But, let's say that all of the, mining power went offline and was, just thrown into the trash heap. And, say that you've got Litecoin out there and it's got, X amount of mining power, computing power behind it, and it's now the biggest guy in the block. I mean, do you think then that would take over, or what do you think?
Yeah, it depends a bit on what the problem would be that would kill Bitcoin. Because like with the dinosaurs, it was like pretty much all the dinosaurs died, and only some like tiny little mammals survived. So maybe the currency that would survive would have to be a bit different from Bitcoin. But that's really hard to speculate on. And right now, it's very unclear what. After 7 years and millions of people trying to, get their heads around it and trying to find flaws, and probably thousands of hackers that have tried to hack it, we have not found a fundamental problem with the Bitcoin protocol. But so it's really hard to speculate what would be, the number two that would take over. What I do think is that if Bitcoin were to have like a real existential crisis where the price would really drop a lot and maybe transactions would be clogged for a while and all that stuff, then maybe a number of users would move to the most liquid altcoin, which for the moment is Litecoin. I'm talking about people who just use Bitcoin for gambling, for example, or people who use Bitcoin to buy stuff on the darknet markets. They don't really care about Bitcoin as a long-term investment. They just want to move in and out quickly. And if Bitcoin transactions take 4 hours to clear, maybe they will, for a while, move to something like Litecoin, for example. I think that is not a very high possibility, but it's a possibility.
Okay, yeah, good point. Yeah, I was just curious about your take on the hypothetical. I think you're right. It would be whatever would provide liquidity for transactions like that, because you're right. People doing the gambling or on the darknet aren't necessarily concerned with the long-term prospects of Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency. They just want it for those quick transactions.
Or Dash. I kind of like Dash.
Or Dash. Yeah, no, I mean, Dash would probably be also one of the potential alternative contenders. Bless you. Well, let's kind of switch gears, but on a related note nonetheless. It's clear you do a lot of investing and, write articles on investing and give occasional advice. And I noticed maybe on your Twitter, I can't remember, you had some discussion about gold and silver. Do you see, I think, of course, ultimately one could argue that if all goes well, Bitcoin will replace all other sort of monetary assets as far as money. But do you see gold and silver still maintaining their part as monetary assets going forward for a while, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think gold and silver will have another time in the spotlights, and that may be coming in a few years ahead. Because the world is just awash in debt, and we have all these fiat currencies who fundamentally are worth. Value is subjective, but if you keep printing them, they will become worthless, and something is going to happen. With inflation, we're going to have lots of volatility, and people are going to want safe haven instruments. And yeah, I really do think that. And not everyone is going to go to Bitcoin, or people are going to diversify, some in Bitcoin, some in gold and silver. So I'm very interested in gold and silver still. For the moment, I'm really excited about the gold mines. I think there's a lot of value. I mean, gold mines are almost lower than they were in 2001. It's incredible how much.
Wow.
Yeah, how much, if you express them in gold, they are actually lower than they were in 2001.
And that's
so
when gold was
potential there.
That's when gold was around like 250 and had been trading there for like the previous decade, right? I believe.
Yeah.
Before it had its big bull run.
Yeah, so it's just. I mean, there was overinvestment in the gold space, and there was too much debt, and they kind of let go of their hedges. And when the gold price came down, they ran into trouble. But yeah, I mean, that's now an opportunity for investors.
Wow, note to self. I'm going to go see how much cash I might have available to put in that. I'll have to do some research. Yeah, no, that sounds like a very interesting possibility. And I agree with you. I've long maintained that, I think gold and silver for quite some time are going to be there as safe haven, hard financial assets. Well, let me ask you too. I mean, I think everyone, as you've already intimated many times, and as probably all of our listeners know, the dollar, like all fiat currencies, will eventually see its doom. But do you see that happening anytime soon? And what do you think has kept the dollar afloat for so long?
Well, right now we have $8-9 trillion in non-U.S. based dollar-denominated debt. All that stuff has to be paid back, and the higher the dollar goes, the more these debtors are being squeezed. And in order to pay off their debts, they have to buy dollars. So that's why the dollar is so strong. And I think it's gonna stay like that for the next year at least. We're gonna have a strong dollar. It could rise another 20%, and we potentially will also see a crash in the markets. And then people go to the safe haven, and cash and short-term bonds are that, at least in the traditional paradigm. So I think that's why the dollar is strong for the moment. Longer term, I think they're going to try to replace it by possibly an SDR. The IMF is going to try to make that a world currency. I'm doubtful how successful it's going to be, but there's definitely plans out there to replace the dollar as a reserve currency.
Yeah, and those plans have even been out there since actually before the dollar sort of became the world currency. I mean, even Keynes came up with the Bancor.
The Bancor, yeah.
Yeah, even before the Bretton Woods Accords that created the dollar financial system. I like your response because if I understood you correctly, it kind of jives with why I've kind of thought the dollar has remained strong. Is like in case I am reading you correctly, because there's so much dollar denominated debt, as you mentioned, that there's this constant artificial demand for dollars to pay it off. So that's kind of kept it afloat. Is that basically what you were saying?
Yeah, exactly. It's the unwinding of the dollar carry trade. And the same thing happened with the yen, the Japanese yen. That's why the yen was so strong for so long, even though they were printing like crazy.
Right. Well, we have a little more than 2 minutes left. You did mention the SDR, and you had, I think, an article talking about the IMF using blockchain digital SDRs. Did you want to comment on that real quick?
That's just pure speculation, but it was Jim Rickards who said it, who has, he has a bit of credibility in that space because he's been involved with the Fed and all those people. But that's real speculation. Hey, but before we go, I did want to quickly mention we put out a report called "How to Position for the Rally in Bitcoin." It's completely free. It's 17 pages. I put a lot of time into that. It's usually a report that we would charge for, but this is just to show people what we do. It's been downloaded by over 2,000 investors so far all over the world.
Oh, wow.
So if you go to my Twitter account, it's the first tweet. It's right there. The link is right there. You can just go there and download it. I think it's some of the best stuff I've done in Bitcoin.
Awesome. And what was the name of the paper again?
The report is called "How to Position for the Rally in Bitcoin," which kind of reveals how we think about Bitcoin for the moment.
Awesome. And it's right there at the top of your Twitter account. So yes. Yeah, of course, he does have adamantresearch.com and tourdemester.com, but it sounds like the best place to reach him and his info and newsletters and other tweets is Twitter. So check out TURDEMEESTER, Tour de Mester on Twitter. And he is very active and a lot of cool stuff over there. A lot of that was useful for my interview questions, and I think a lot of it's going to be useful for potential investing. So check that out. And we are coming to break. We've got 30 seconds left. Any final thoughts, Tor?
I don't know. I'm just so excited that this is happening, and it's happening across all borders, and it's changing the world at a very quick pace. I think a lot of people will be surprised 10 years from now how much will have changed.
Absolutely. Tour de Mester. Check him out on Twitter. We really appreciate you being on the show, and we hope to have you back.
Bye-bye. Thanks for having me.
Trust
Brian Deere can't be trusted. Welcome back to the Crypto Show, guys, here on Logos Radio Network.
Neither can that guy that took his toys and went home.
Am I right? And we might talk about that. And speaking of Brian Deere, who can't be trusted, no, he can. He's here in studio with us. And of course, he is from Factum. And Brian, what is your official title there?
They call me the Chief Scientist.
The Chief Scientist. Sounds very pompous. No, I'm just kidding. Well, we don't respect your titles. We're anarchists, Brian Deere. So you can take that title and you can throw it out the window.
What exactly is 1.21 gigawatts?
Oh, it's about a lightning. One lightnings.
Oh, there you go. That was easy. Well, real quick, too, I want to thank Tour Demester. I'm probably butchering the name. TUURDEMEESTER, who was just our guest here on the Crypto Show. Check him out on Twitter. Check him out at hisname.com. And check him out at adamantresearch.com or adamantresearch.com, according to Danny.
Oh.
And he does have a
goody two shoes.
Exactly. He does have a free newsletter available on his Twitter page, a 17-page paper entitled How to Position for the Rally in Bitcoin. In fact, I'm on his Twitter page right now. It's at the top. There's like a little sort of PDF image of it, so you can't miss it. Check that out. He seems like a really smart guy. Really knows what he's talking about. I would listen to him if I were you.
Previous statement may not actually be true, or it's based in drug-induced fantasy.
The second part. But he was a great guest. I'm glad he put up with me because it's been a long weekend and a lot of last-minute prep work there. I'm sure it showed. But it was wonderful talking to him. But now we're talking, as I mentioned, with Brian Deere of Factum. And Brian, do you want to dig into the whole – I know we've had you on before to talk about the whole Bitcoin fork, of course, the whole XT thing with Mike Hearn. Mike Hearn, of course, he has exited the building. He sold all his Bitcoin, said Bitcoin is dead. Do you have any comments on some of the new proposals? Like
man, Bitcoin has been dead so many times.
That's what I said, too.
It's
at 72, 89, who knows?
And it just keeps resurrecting like Lazarus. Maybe Lazarus.
I'm pretty sure, in all reality, it was not Mike Hearn that killed Bitcoin.
Oh, no?
It was Bart.
You're right. Is it any coincidence that we had him on and then with his skeptical viewpoint and then look what happened? Exactly.
I made that prediction.
You did. Well, I wish I'd bet money on that. I'll have to listen to you more next time.
Well, he does have some things to say. The Bitcoin is a double-edged sword for liberty. So
as far as its traceability, or what do you mean?
So Bitcoin will stop the arbitrary inflation of money, but everything that everyone does on Bitcoin, as it currently stands, is totally, completely public, which powerful people don't even need to pretend that they had a warrant in order to learn everything about you. So that's
an interesting point. And yeah, I was just kind of joking about the coincidental timing between Bart being on and Bitcoin. And Bart, by the way, I really appreciate him being on if he's listening. And it was a great conversation. And I like the skepticism because it's too much. Sometimes it's an echo chamber, and it's good to have an outside viewpoint and skepticism. And it was a good discussion. But yeah, that's a good point. And, I'm pro Bitcoin, but I certainly recognize things like what you just said, that sort of trackability, traceability. Now, I mean, in theory, there's programs being developed to create anonymity or to some degree, right? And then, of course, you might be able to follow someone's address, but that doesn't mean that address is necessarily tied to other information about you, right? So
now, this is one of the things. One of our local Austin natives, not natives, but local Austin guys, he's developed a protocol called payment codes, and I'm very much anticipating this. The guy, his name is Justice Ranveer, and he's developed this protocol that.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him?
No. He's kind of an idiot as far as my experience. No, I'm just kidding. No, Justice is a brilliant guy. He's a great guy too. No, but go on. I didn't know he was working on this.
Yes. So this protocol is going to very much help with address reuse. And one of the problems that people have is they want to make sure that people send them money to the correct address. And there's a few ways of doing this, but most of the ways involve just using the same address multiple times.
Because it's just the easiest. I mean,
it's the easiest.
Yeah.
We've already certified that
tried and true.
That. But this is bad for privacy because you can then tell the second time that they paid that the same person has been paid again. And lots of information can be gleaned from this.
That's true. Sort of implied stuff about what's going on. Yeah. At the very least. Yeah. And this technology that he's developed basically allows you to
strongly identify yourself with a so say someone's accountant needs to pay you monthly or something like that. Well, one of two things could happen. You could give them a new address each month, or give them a whole list of addresses, and but then if something goes wrong, then someone could interject themselves into that. So and money would be paid to someone else instead of you.
Christoph Atlas is working on that too, right?
This seems right up his alley. Seems right up his alley.
Real quick, sorry. How would someone interject in that situation?
So if someone were able to intercept your email, or they hacked your email and then pretended to send money to pretended to send an email to your accountant, your accountant would follow your email, but your email was actually a hacker.
Oh, I see. To give like erroneous instructions, say to the accountant to move your money or something.
Yes.
Okay.
And this actually happened in Tim Draper. Adam Draper is Tim Draper's son. He runs an accelerator out of Silicon Valley for Bitcoin companies. And
it's a particle accelerator? No,
something
sorry.
like that. And he had this big story where someone took over his email and emailed his accountant. And this was the traditional financial system. And he got a full dose of what it's like living in the full financial system. His accountant sent money to some bank with his email, and it turned out a lot of people talk about how the financial system today is it's got all this overhead and it's got all these problems, but it's okay because it's reversible. So if something goes wrong, if something goes bad, if you send money to the wrong person, then you can use the legal system, and then you can use the banking system, and it may take a few months, but you can get your money back. Well, he found out that not so much. He lost tens of thousands of dollars to this email hack.
Wow.
And he was it's turned into a life lesson for him.
So that's just a great example that could also apply in the Bitcoin realm of what can happen to you. Yeah.
Yes.
When you have
still cheaper than a student loan, though, right?
Well, yeah, right. But yeah, if you have less optimal security or privacy features or whatever, then you're subject to potential attacks like that. Yeah.
So the payment codes are a way for me to give someone who's going to pay me some piece of information, and then every time that they pay me, it's to a new address. And so someone who's looking at the blockchain, trying to figure out who's paying who, it makes it that much harder to do.
Don't some of the wallets already do this?
I don't know of any wallet that implements payment codes. At least,
they use different addresses.
They use different addresses.
Well, I guess elaborate a little more on the payment codes and how it works. I mean, because
I don't think you want me to do that.
No.
I'm going to put your users to sleep.
Oh no, too technical.
It's fancy cryptography and uses some clever cryptography tricks to arrive at Diffie-Hellman keys and.
Diffie-Hellman. Yeah.
You know those guys, right?
Sure.
Rock stars.
I had drinks with them last weekend. Yeah. No, but so there's not really a simple way of explaining it, is what you're saying?
Not really.
But nonetheless, since it's something that you understand and you're a smart guy, you know this stuff. It sounds like a helpful process, and since it's being developed by Justice Ranvier, also a brilliant guy in this space, it's going to be. It sounds like a really good application for increasing one's privacy and security using Bitcoin. Yes. That's pretty cool. We should have Justice on. We haven't had him on in a little while. Maybe he could.
Or we can just have Lima and Peggy on.
Yeah. What?
The dogs.
Oh, yeah. Why do I always forget the dog? I actually saw him like 2 days ago in dogs. I don't know why I always forget their names. But yeah. And so, but that's just one example of what one person is developing for the Bitcoin space because of this transparency that, like you said, is a double-edged sword. In some respects, it can be a great thing where transparency is needed, but where transparency is bad, then obviously it undermines what people are trying to do for themselves. What else? What other problems do you see with that? And what other kind of solutions are out there that people are working on?
Oh, so let's see where to begin. There's so many problems. One of the ones that came up from one of the recent Scaling Bitcoin conference that basically got announced is something called segregated witness. So
this Scaling Bitcoin conference, that's the one that Hearn went to, right?
He actually didn't go to any of the Scaling Bitcoin conferences.
But he knows all about it.
But here's a nice tidbit. Back in the day when I was trying to get people really excited about Bitcoin, or explaining why I was excited at least.
Would you go woohoo a lot?
Not so much.
Okay.
I would send them Mike Hearn's 2012 Bitcoin conference speech, where he basically laid out all these different solutions about the things you could do with smart contracts. And this was the first time I heard about payment channels. And this is where you can buy services to the example he gave is you wanted to buy internet service at a per minute, say. Well, it doesn't make sense to make a Bitcoin transaction every minute. What you would do is you would take some money, lock it up, and then
once it reached a sort of accumulated threshold, then it would be released, maybe?
Well, I think we're going to have to pick this up.
Cliffhanger with Brian Deary of Factum, Chief Scientist. We'll be right back to discuss this and much more on the other side of the break. So stay tuned to the Crypto Show, guys.
Now.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
For the longest time. For the longest. If you said that Bitcoin was my line, I would tell you. Show enough, show you right.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely January 17th, 2016, a Sunday here on Logos Radio Network. Check out the Logos Radio Network fundraiser at logosradionetwork.com. And, of course, we are here thanks to our sponsors, Brave New Books, where you can get Tangy Tangerine and Burke Superfoods and a bunch of cool books on conspiracies and Austrian economics, and Hill Country Home Improvements for all your roofing needs. They do accept Bitcoin and eCoin. And we'll talk about our upcoming hopeful venture with eCoin that we're going to try to work out when we go to Anarchapulco. So we'll have more details on that as it develops. But we're talking with Brian Deary of Factum, who is sitting here staring at me. No, I'm just kidding.
He's admiring our fancy new walls that we actually have now.
Oh, yeah. Instead of just bookshelves, Danny literally actually installed walls here to partition off the studio from the rest of the room. So it looks really good. So, well, speaking of walls, metaphorical walls.
So we were talking about Mike Hearn.
Yeah. I was trying to lead the walls into like a privacy walls. Come on, man. No, anyway, but Mike Hearn, go ahead.
Okay. So Mike Hearn in his 2012 Bitcoin conference presentation talked about payment code or payment channels.
Yeah.
And these payment channels allowed two people to renegotiate thousands and thousands of times before they actually settled on who got how much money.
So you're using the example of paying for internet by the minute, say,
yes.
Instead of paying every single minute.
Yes. So what I would do is I would say, I want to buy $10 worth of internet, but I'm not going to pay up front for $10. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to make a Bitcoin transaction that pays $99.99 back to myself and 1 cent to the access point, to the internet service provider. And then the internet service provider would give me a penny's worth of data, and then we would renegotiate every penny or every dime or something like that. And this renegotiation doesn't happen on the blockchain. It happens off the blockchain. But here's the magic part. If any one of the parties disappears, then they get to the person who didn't disappear broadcasts the final version of the transaction, and they get the money that they were owed. So instead of 10,000 transactions being put on the Bitcoin blockchain, there are only two. One when someone starts and when they finish.
Okay.
The problem was this was flawed. The initial design of Bitcoin, it didn't. There were holes in this, and it basically didn't work. And this is some of the advancements that are happening in Bitcoin. In these previous few and in the next few months. And one of the things that it is going to do is called segregated witness.
And this is the proposed soft fork, right, for Bitcoin?
Yes.
And go ahead.
So segregated witness is a way for the signature data to be removed from the transaction, but still kind of there. And this...
Yeah, and just to clarify...
so it should not be segregated witness, but segregated signatures.
Sure, that's one way of looking at it. But
a signature is a witness, I guess, right, in this manner of speaking, to the validity of the transaction or whatever.
It's almost always a signature, but it could be other things. It could be other smaller trivial things.
Well, and just to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, but Tor briefly touched upon segregated witness and basically said it was a way to strip some of the data from Bitcoin transactions to streamline or I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but to cut some of the data fat for the block.
Yeah.
Right. So that effectively it adds 75% more capacity to the block
if
by
everyone
trimming
upgrades.
some of that. If everyone upgrades. Okay. Is that correct then?
Sounds about right.
Okay, cool. And so that sounds like a neat idea. And of course, as people have said, soft forks are better than hard forks, generally speaking, or probably as a general rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he did say that this soft fork segregated witness might create problems for wallets to adapt to the change. Do you have any comments on that, or do you know how it might affect that, or what are some of the potential downsides, I guess?
Sure. The downside is all the software, all your wallets, everything needs to be upgraded to account for this. To actually use the feature, to receive the money from a segregated witness transaction, you don't need to. But in order to spend the money, and it's all still backwards compatible, so your old wallets will still work.
Oh, okay.
They just won't get that little extra trimming.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of cool. Like, I know when I first ever learned about the idea of a fork, soft or hard, there was always that scare, like, well, does that mean my Bitcoins will become useless kind of thing? But generally speaking, that's not the case, right? Even
stainless or plastic.
Wait, what? Stainless or plastic Bitcoin?
The forks. Soft or hard?
Oh, I'm stupid. Thank you. God. I don't know. I get so caught up in trying to think about what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't get your jokes. Either that or I'm stupid. I don't know. But
so the scalability, the trimming of the fat is not why people are excited about this.
Really?
So
that's just secondary. Or...
It gets rid of transaction malleability. And
explain that. I've heard that before, but
so what's a good analogy?
Wasn't that the issue with Mt. Gox,
yes.
right?
Well, no, the issue with Mt. Gox is they stole the money.
Well, yeah, but wasn't that the alleged?
That's what they blamed it on.
Yeah,
that's what they blamed it on.
Sorry, this is great because the problem with Mt. Gox is they stole the money. Just that was awesome. Anyway, go on.
Kind of Cryptsy did.
Cryptsy says they got hacked, which is in the Bitcoin space indistinguishable from stealing the money.
Right, and Chris Oda made that good point when we had him on, and it's true. I mean, like, how would you know the difference? You're taking it on faith that that's precisely what happened. But anyway, so but yeah, transaction malleability, it would get rid of that. Explain what that is and how it would get rid of that.
Okay, so this has to do with a little bit of a quirk in the way Bitcoin transactions are made. It's the Bitcoin transaction has an identifier attached to it. And if any little piece of the transaction changes, then the identifier changes. Now, someone on the network, they can see your transaction that's put out into the wild, make a tiny little change to it, and now it's still a valid Bitcoin transaction, but it has a different name now. It's still sending money from the same person to the same person, but if you're only looking at the name, it will look like the name of that transaction got lost and it went away.
So what's the implication of that then? Like, what could be a negative consequence of that appearance, that false appearance?
Sure. The problem with Mt. Gox was they saw that this transaction that had this name went away, and they figured, all right, well, my customer still wants their money, so let me send them their money again. And even though the customer got their money, Mt. Gox sent the money again because they were only looking at the name of the transaction, not the flows of money.
I see. So it's a way to scam people. Like, you could, if you're receiving money, you could maybe change the name and pretend if the person's not diligent, that it was never sent, and they would send it again and say, okay, that makes sense.
Now, of course, you can code around this. People can be smarter about that. But where it really has problems is chains of transactions. So there's some really neat advanced features in Bitcoin where you can pay someone money and then then other things happen with that money that was paid, and it's the second transaction relies on the first transaction, but it relies on the name of the transaction. So if someone can then change the name of that transaction, then it totally invalidates the second transaction that other people were relying on.
Well, that sounds interesting. Let's elaborate on that on the other side of the break with Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factom, here in studio with us on The Crypto Show. We'll be right back, guys.
Is it possible for radio waves to make you sick? Many people think so, and some are taking refuge in the remote mountains of West Virginia. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll tell you about something called the Radio Quiet Zone next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Wi-Fi, power lines, and cell towers bombard us with radio waves. But for some people, even low levels of this radiation can be debilitating. The condition called electromagnetic hypersensitivity causes acute headaches, burning skin, and chronic pain. The effects are so bad that a colony of Wi-Fi refugees has taken root in the U.S. Radio Quiet Zone in West Virginia. That's an area where all radio transmissions are banned because of the sensitive radio telescopes located there. Gas refrigerators, wood stoves, kerosene lamps. These folks are all too happy to live free from electricity and the radio pollution they say goes with it. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Actually be kidding about chemtrails.
Looking for some truth? You found it. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
I've been walking a tightrope between fact and fiction. Been wrestling with demons in small bottle prisons. Been talking to sinners who claim to be Christian. Been shouting at leaders who claim to be listening. And the pendulum swings from...
Apparently no one cares about my health problems here on The Crypto Show. Not even my co-host. Not Brian Deary. No, I'm just kidding. I was just talking about how sometimes the weekend brings its own problems later on, and sometimes you take certain beverages with B vitamins to help. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So, segregated witness proposed soft fork for Bitcoin trims transactions to effectively allow for a higher block size limit. But that's not even the most important thing. Get back to explaining the most important part of that.
So it allows these really advanced transaction chains of transactions where money is being put into a bucket and then being moved out of that bucket. And multiple people can control that bucket. And before segregated witness, well, I say before, it hasn't been implemented yet, but before that, the money going into the bucket could be tweaked and messed with, invalidating all of the things that relied on money coming out of the bucket.
And this is with respect to the transaction malleability?
Correct.
Okay. And so, but then segregated witness fixes this, you say?
Yes.
And so how likely this chain problem, has this happened before? Is it purely hypothetical? How big of a deal is it?
Well, it's kind of the chicken and the egg problem. So people haven't built these protocols that take advantage of these advanced multi-transaction chains because they were so trivially broken.
I see. No one just bothered because it was easy to see the fundamental flaw in it. So there was no way to correct it yet. So why even try to work on that feature yet?
Right.
That makes sense. Okay. So it sounds like segregated witness. I feel I'm sold. I don't know. It sounds like segregated witness has a lot to offer. It's a soft fork, which, just all things being equal are better than a hard fork. It trims the data fat, effectively allows for a higher block size limit, and then it corrects this chain problem with transaction malleability. Well, what's not to love?
Indeed. All the cool kids are doing it.
Well, I mean, literally, though, what's not to love? Are there any downsides to adopting it, or
all the wallets need to be updated?
Well, okay, fair enough. That's like what we were talking about. But, I guess that's kind of part of life, right? I guess when it comes to Bitcoin, when I'm sure for any, future soft forks that may occur, that's just kind of one of the things that developers are going to have to expect, I guess, right? I mean, is it just one of those things, or is it something that could be avoided? Do you think there was a way for segregated witness to have been designed better to avoid that, or what do you think?
The idea has been around for a long time, but in the past, it was all thought about to be a hard fork, which means a very drastic upgrade to all of the software in Bitcoin. And although I say all the wallets need to be updated, they don't all need to be updated.
It's just likely, or
in order to take advantage of the extra fat trimming that you alluded to earlier, they would need to be updated.
I see.
But that just has to do with how expensive your transactions are. So it's...
Well, explain that real quick. Sorry, what do you mean how expensive the transactions are?
So in Bitcoin, when you're sending money from one account to another, it doesn't matter how much value is being transferred when it comes to the fees. The fees are calculated based on how much data in the blockchain your transaction takes up. So you could be sending $1 million and take up 300 bytes, and you'd pay a nickel. And you could be spending $1 and use, let's say, 10K, and the fees would be very, very large.
Okay, I think that's an important point because some people may not be aware of that or forget that's how the fee system works.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so by making the signatures not count effectively with this segregated witness, then if 60% of the transaction doesn't count, then you don't get charged for that. Now, eventually, then this will start counting, but it's only with this artificially limited block size that it actually plays into comes into account. And something that a lot of people keep in mind, the Bitcoin blockchain, you can keep up with it with a 33K baud dial-up modem. There is that much.
Really?
Yes. There is a very small amount of data that is actually going into the Bitcoin blockchain. Granted, you wouldn't be able to catch up, but you'd be able to maintain the blockchain with that dial-up modem.
What do you mean catch up? You want to be able to catch up?
You wouldn't be able to download the 70 gigabytes of, or 50 or whatever it's up to now, of transactional data with that dial-up modem, and then start while keeping up with all the latest transaction. But if you had the 50 gigabytes and all you had was the dial-up, you could theoretically keep up.
And the transactional data is the whole transactional history?
All of history of Bitcoin, yes.
All of history.
Yes.
That's kind of cool. Man, I remember, just real quick as an aside, this is not really relevant, but I remember this was like 2002 or 3 when some people still had dial-up, but it was clear, obviously, everyone was going high-speed, cable, whatever, DSL. And this girl in my class who was very pretty, and I just like crush on her. Long story short, she was part of this MLM marketing scheme for selling dial-up internet. And I remember, like, she convinced me to go to this meeting, and I quickly realized, oh God, it's one of those sort of pyramid scheme meetings and high pressure and weird. Exactly. Thank you, Brian. You just hit the nail on the head there. No, but it was just like, I just remember thinking, like, aside from like the awkwardness of being in that situation, that it was selling dial-up internet where that was clearly dying out. Anyway, sorry, personal aside, but I love reminiscing with a few memories I have left in my brain after years of certain kinds of abuse. Anyway, but so wait, where were we?
We're in Austin.
Oh, that's right. So that's interesting, though. Even with the dial-up, you could kind of do that. Well, so what about? Okay, so what? I guess let's switch gears. Do you have any other comments on segregated witness?
There were also a lot of other things that were presented at the conference that kind of got tied up with this. One of these is fraud proofs. This was kind of alluded to in the Satoshi Bitcoin paper, but
can you explain that
sure.
very readily? Or?
Sure. So if you're running a client in Bitcoin that doesn't have the entire blockchain, you are relying on your peers, on other people who do have the entire blockchain, to tell you the truth. And they cannot lie to you and tell you that there is a transaction, that someone has sent you money when they haven't, because of the magic of hashes and Merkle trees and that whatnot.
Is that named after Angela Merkel, the Prime Minister of Germany?
No, her brother, Ralph Merkel.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry, anyway, go
on. So what these peers can do, though, is they can lie to you and tell you that no one has sent you money, even though they have.
And so what would happen in that case?
Well, you'd on your wallet, it would show you that you don't have any balance when in fact you do.
So
now
where
you,
is the...
You can get around that by asking multiple people and hoping that one of them tells you the truth, that someone sent you money, and they cannot lie and tell you that someone has sent you money even though they have not.
Right. But they can lie in the reverse.
Yes.
So what happens to the money in that case if it's not showing up in your wallet? They've sent it to you.
Oh, it's still in the blockchain and you still have access to it. You just don't know about it.
Huh. And so how would you, if no one told you the truth in that situation, but somehow you knew what had transpired, how would you fix that?
Ask more people.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Okay. Interesting. Well, we're coming to break with Brian Deary of Factum. I want to hear more about some of the other proposals that were tied up with segregated witness, and then also get his take on Bitcoin Classic, which is the other proposal, which is the hard fork. So it should be some interesting stuff. We'll be back for our final segment here in a moment on The Crypto Show.
Easy.
All right, guys, welcome back to the final segment of The Crypto Show here on this lovely January 17th, 2016 Sunday, and I'm sure it shows in my hosting duties. Sundays are always a little bit weaker compared to Wednesdays because it's the weekend.
Did you say the same thing on Wednesday?
Well, that's true. Well, never mind. It's always kind of a low expectation thing. But we're talking with Brian Deary of Factum, and before we get on with our discussion, for our Let's Talk Bitcoin listeners, our LTB listeners, the magic word is economic apartheid. Economic apartheid. That's two words, ECONOMIC, APARTHEID. ECONOMIC, APARTHEID. I think I spelled that right. I don't know. But economic apartheid is the magic word. Why do you look at me like that?
Just try it until it works.
Okay. Yeah, that's the way I do it. So Brian was telling us about...
Just use spell check.
I don't have a spell check in my brain, unfortunately. But you were telling us about, what was it called? Fraud proofs associated with segregated witness. Anyway, continue with that.
So kind of wrapped up into this proposal that was presented, which is sort of related, but only partially, we were talking about how it's impossible for a client that is only has a very small part of Bitcoin to realize that the miners are lying to them. So it would be good for...
Are those the MLM scam miners?
Those different ones. Oh. Ones that are actually...
Those residual guys.
Ones that are saying... So in Bitcoin...
I'm not a fan of that.
One of the guarantees is if a transaction is in the blockchain, then it is valid. Well, what happens if a miner makes a transaction that is actually invalid and puts that into the blockchain and then mines it? There would be some proof that these small clients have that someone has sent them money, but in reality they hadn't, and there's no good way for a peer, for someone else to show them, hey, this person is lying to you. This miner has done something improper, even though they've expended all the electricity and they've done everything right. There's still that money. That money's not yours. It's fake money. And so what fraud proofs do is they make it so that someone who is not a miner can build a proof, very much like you can prove that the money has been given to you. Another parallel proof that proves actually not, and this is why. And actually not, and this is why, is what the fraud proof is. Huh. And right now there's no good way of doing that without having all of history in Bitcoin. And
but what do you mean without having
to prove that the money is fake? You would have to have all of Bitcoin history to realize that this money came from nothing.
So you'd have to go through all of the history?
Yes.
Well, and the history's available, right?
It's available, but
it's just a question
50
of
gigabytes.
So basically, it would be really difficult to comb through all that.
And you can't do that on a cell phone.
I see what you're saying.
Now, with
so
one of
I
the,
see.
With one of the extensions to segregated witness, then it makes the miners in the block show where the money came from. And if they can't show where the money came from, then that basically means that it came from nothing, which is invalid.
Fiat money.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And so, so basically, segregated witness would solve this problem too, is what you're saying?
Or
at least
something
it would make it easy.
That's potentially going to get wrapped up with that. They probably aren't going to put that out initially because let's not change too many things at once.
Right. So when you say it's wrapped up with it, is this fraud proofing somehow more compatible with segregated witnesses like code or protocol, or is it simply like a completely separate thing that is just thrown in that people are proposing? Do you know what I'm saying?
It's like, kind of a separate thing that fits neatly in with some of the structures that are being built already.
Okay, so basically both is what it sounds like. Kind of like, yeah, I see what you're saying. So that makes sense because otherwise it seems like they're just ad hoc attaching something, almost like, Congress will attach like a farming bill to, I don't know, defense spending bill or whatever. But that makes more sense. It works well with the architecture of segregated witness.
Yes.
I see. Well, let's talk about. I should have done.
How about the current state of Factum? I mean, I know you can't say anything about a lot of it, but I mean, how's it going over there?
Oh, well, it's plugging along. Paul Snow, our founder, is going to be speaking at the Miami Bitcoin conference.
That's cool. Is he still wearing that Caesar outfit with the toga? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Anyway, go ahead. I'll let Paul Snow.
Yeah. There was a hackathon a couple weeks ago in Shanghai. And
cool. Did he attend that?
Paul did not, but David Johnston, our chairman of the board, and our CTO Jack were judges at that hackathon.
That's really cool.
Yep. And one of the winners was using Factum as the underlying layer to track shipping containers.
Wow! Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's very fitting too. You said it was in China.
Yeah.
Like to track shipping containers. They're obviously the biggest country with the most amount of that traffic. That's cool that it's that practical too.
I want to track my shipping containers so I know when my miners are showing up.
Am I right? I like that. That's good. That's really cool. What else is going on with Factum that you can talk about?
Oh, let's see. We're making progress towards milestone 2. So right now, Factum is running on a single server, centralized, and the magic happens when we go decentralized. And so our team is plugging along with the messages and the architecture to make it so that different data structures can be built with in real time rather than after the fact. And
what do you mean by that?
It turns into a more of a collaborative effort with the federated servers. So in Bitcoin, you have one computer who collects all the transactions together, builds the block, and then tells the world about it. And that's how we're doing our system right now. And then later on, we're going to have multiple servers all acting collaboratively, but they need to collaborate to all build the same block together. And so this is particularly difficult because instead of one computer building a block, now it's multiple computers.
And they all have to reconcile with each other. Yeah,
they all have to agree on the same exact things all the time.
And what's the? I mean, it's almost a silly question in a way because
to avoid a central attack, right?
Yes. So
let me finish my question.
No,
that's exactly what I was wanting to know. Yeah. No, that's exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
So the Bitcoin spread out who has authority over the system. Anyone who burns electricity is the one who gets to figure out what's in the block or not. And we're attempting to make it so that there are multiple servers all over the place, and then control bounces from one to the other, all the way around. And if one of them decides that you're a bad guy and what you're doing needs to be censored, control will bounce to another one fairly shortly thereafter who thinks you're a good guy and doesn't care about you and will put you into the system.
Sounds like a nerdy game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, it does. It does sound strangely like emotional and personal, though, the way you described it. Like, he thinks you're a good guy. No, he thinks you're a bad guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. No, that's cool. And so there's going to be, so the software architecture though is a little more complex for that system is what you were saying basically.
Yes.
So it takes a little more time for rollout. And when do you expect that to roll out, or is that
Oh, it's hard to say.
Hard to say?
Hard software development always takes longer than you expect.
Right. It's like government work. No, I'm just kidding. Well, that's really cool. And I have to say, we do appreciate Factom and Paul Snow. Of course, we appreciate Paul Snow not just for Factom and what they're doing there, but for the Texas Bitcoin Conference of the past 2 years. And we're hoping that there will be one this year. He'll give us more updates on that. We also appreciate the one time that Paul let us come live with the show from the Factom offices. I'm sure we'll do that again. It was a lot of fun. And I have to say, it's a pretty cool little office space. And I didn't realize I liked how y'all had some of those sort of magazine articles about you guys. And I didn't realize y'all got into The Economist, I guess, right? At least that was what was hanging up on the wall there.
That was pretty incredible, yeah.
Yeah. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, that's a pretty prominent magazine.
Factom is a very powerful thing. It's going to be able to solve a lot of problems. And it seems like people are realizing that this is a potential solution to a lot of things.
Awesome. Well, we got less than a minute left. Any final thoughts, Brian? He's a man of few words.
I'm a man of few words.
Well, of course, people go to Factom.com, right?
Factom.org for the software. And then there's a for-profit company that is going to be building projects on top of Factom so that there's... it's not just an open source software project. It's someone that has contracts and you can interface with and have business relationships with. And that's the Factom Inc. Organization.
Awesome. Well, so check that out, guys. Thank you, Brian Deary. We appreciate it. Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factom. And I should have done, can I get a segregated witness as a reservoir? Oh, well. I kept regretting that. But it's too late. Irreversible. We'll see you next time, guys.